Now that we've shown you how to cast on your stitches, what we're going to do next is the knit stitch. We're just going to work on a small sample today, just for ease. Again, just be aware of how you're holding your knitting and your needles. Your left hand should be over the left hand needle. Your right hand should be holding the right needle a bit like it's a pen. To do the knit stitch, we take the right needle through the first stitch on the left needle, from left to right, front to back, so that the right hand needle is under the left hand needle, like so. So it's going right through the centre of the stitch. Take the yarn and wrap it anti-clockwise around the right hand needle. This will form a loop on the right hand needle there. We just need to pull that loop through with the right needle and then pull the old stitch that it went into off the left hand needle so that the new stitch is formed on the right needle. We'll do that again. So take the needle through the centre of the stitch, from left to right, front to back, under the left hand needle. Wrap the yarn around the right hand needle, like so. So you've got a loop on your right hand needle, pull that loop through the stitch and take the stitch off the left hand needle. We've knitted 2 stitches. Once again, through the stitch, around with the yarn, pull that loop through that you've made and pull the old stitch off the left hand needle so that the new stitch is now on your right hand needle. So we'll keep knitting in this manner until the end of the row. When you knit rows of knit stitch, we refer to this as garter stitch. It's the most basic of the knit stitches. So once you get to the end of the row, what you'll do is transfer the knitting over into the left hand, and your right hand will now hold the empty needle. When you go to start your next row, just always be careful that your yarn sits down to the back of your knitting. Don't take it over the top like that, because what happens is it forms 2 loops, and some people accidentally increase in their knitting by knitting into each of those loops. So just make sure, pull it down a little bit so that the yarn sits at the back. So now we'll knit another row. So in through your first stitch, left to right, back to front, under your knitting needle. Take your yarn around and off. So this is another knit row. As I said, when you do lots of knit rows, it forms garter stitch. If you have a look at your knitting, one of these ridges, if you look along here, that's 2 rows of the knit stitch. So keep going with your knitting, and what we'll do is continue with your beanie doing these rows of knitting until you come to the end of the very first ball, and I'll show you how to join in the next ball of yarn. Continue knitting your beanie, and now you've come to nearly the end of the first ball. It's a good idea to join in the new balls of yarn at the side edge of your work rather than in the middle of your work. It just means you'll have a much nicer finish, and the ends can be sewn into the seam later on. One way to tell whether you're going to have enough yarn to knit across a row is to, with the remaining yarn that you've got left over, just wrap it 4 times across your work, like so, just roughly. If it goes across 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, that means you'll have enough yarn to knit that row. But what I'm going to show you, rather than knit that row, is how to join in a new ball of yarn. So take the new ball of yarn, leave approximately 10 to 15 centimetres. What you can do is perhaps start the first stitch, put your needle through the first stitch to knit. So you'll have your new ball of yarn, leave the old end just hanging below. You can anchor that new end with your left hand behind, wind it around as you would do normally to knit a stitch, pull it through and take it off your left hand needle. Initially that'll feel quite loose, but just give both ends a little tug and knit a couple more stitches. Again, just give those ends a little tug. You can tie a single knot if you'd like to keep them firm. And then what you'll do at the end is sew those ends into the seam later on. So keep knitting with your second ball as the pattern states.